Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the Tavern. Once again, I'm not in the Tavern, so this is 3 weeks in a row of doing the Tavern, not in the Tavern. Just on the road a lot. Last week in Virginia, and the week before that, we were actually in the chamber at the Patriot Academy campus. So the Tavern's not getting a lot of use right now, but we do have a mug at least. And I am all the way in California, and look at this, a come and take it mug. I'm in the right house. Let me tell you right now, we're at the Zizos family house. Look, I even have state of Texas coasters. And so this is, I'm definitely in the right place. Those of you that have been around Patriot Academy a lot and maybe been to a leadership congress, you might recall me calling them the Zizos Mafia because they took over Patriot Academy's leadership congress in Texas. So these Californians came to Texas and took over. So now I am in California and we're going to take over. Okay, maybe not, but at least they have a taste of Texas all over the house. In fact, you can't see it, but my old friend Dan Flynn, who passed away a couple of years ago, right there, you can see his old house. What do we call those? I can't remember. It was basically our commemorative deal we would do every year as a legislator. We have a picture of the whole legislative house. It's like a panoramic deal. You know, it's one of those you got to sit and wait for the whole thing to go. And anyway, so this is part of Dan Flynn's family. It's why we have so much Texas here. And they're part of the Patriot Academy family for sure. A big part of it, in fact. And so they've allowed me to go live from their basically music room and living room tonight for the Tavern. And they're hosting me tonight with some friends and talking about what's going on with Patriot Academy. But anyway, so that's why I'm not in the Tavern tonight, doing actually a little bit of a tour across California this week. We've got several events. I'll be in Jack Hibbs Church tomorrow night. No, not tomorrow night, Wednesday night. And then we've got a Flashpoint event in California as well. So I'm invested in California, man. I still believe with all my heart that we can win California. I was in Seattle over the weekend doing a Constitution class there. And I'm going to change real quick. Those of you that are watching on Facebook, you notice the post always says the same thing. I haven't figured out how to make Riverside say the right thing there. We'll get better. Okay, so we're doing the Tavern from California, of all places. And anyway, so we were in Seattle. We had a fantastic Constitution Coach event there. Thank you to Aaron Marshall and Scarlett and Jaron and Pastor Jay and all the people that made that a fantastic event. It's one of the biggest ones we've had. I think it was close to 200 people. And that's Seattle, folks. I mean, come on. Again, you can't give up on these blue states and these blue areas. There are a lot of patriots, not just sprinkled into areas like that. There are strong foundational communities all around these blue cities. And you know, if you've done the Constitution class, you've heard us talk about the fact that Benjamin Rush and Thomas Jefferson had that great conversation where they talked about the fact that the cities are pestilential to the morals and health of man. There's no doubt that's true. You look at the blue areas, that's where the most depravity is because you got the most people, and people are depraved. We just are. It's human nature. And so when you cram people in and they're not in nature, they're not out there getting to see God's hand in nature, it just tends to lead to cesspools. And that's what you see in Seattle and Portland and Los Angeles and these areas. But all around them, indeed, in some places like Seattle, we've had huge Constitution classes right there in, Gig Harbor and some of these areas right around Seattle. Same thing with Portland. Same thing with Los Angeles and these other areas that I'm at this week. So don't give up. All right. That's what I'm trying to say. Don't give up on these areas and know that God's got a lot of people out there. And sometimes it's a remnant. It's one of the things we talked about in the Seattle one. We were actually in Bothell, Washington, just north of Seattle. We're about 30 minutes outside of away from the airport there. But one of the things that Pastor Jay talked about was that remnant that God raises up. And one of the other pastors there, when we were praying before the service, talked about the same thing. You have to recognize that God is not done with that area, and we're not in a now we could end up in a Sodom and Gomorrah kind of situation where he just wipes them out. But right now, when you say, if you have an argument with God and you say, okay, God, if there's 50 righteous people, don't destroy it. Okay, well, if there's 20 righteous people, if there's 5, right, whatever you get down to, I mean, even 50, there is no doubt there are thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of righteous people trying to do the right thing, trying to do the best they can, not only to be a good biblical citizen for self-government themselves and their own family, but trying to be salt and light in their communities and trying to help civil government also reflect reflect godly principles. So we know that that's the case, even in the worst of the worst cities all throughout America. I mean, you go out to Massachusetts and you go to some of these extremely liberal areas, there's still great little pockets of godly people being the remnant, and hopefully that'll prevent a complete wiping out of these cities and anybody being turned to salt. All right, so that's the reason that we continue to invest in these areas. Now, the part of California I'm in tonight is actually a conservative part of California. I love going to places like Bakersfield and Chowchilla and a lot of the ag country or military part of California continues to be very conservative, and good churches and people that are really continuing to try to save this thing. So I love coming out here. I'm looking forward to tomorrow night in Los Angeles, and then Wednesday night in Chino Hills, and Thursday night we've got our big Flashpoint event. It's actually a Thursday and Friday night Flashpoint event in California. If you're in California, you want to make sure you get an opportunity to go to fparmy.com. You can learn more about this particular Flashpoint event that's taking place this week. I'm only going to be there on Thursday night because I am headed to Arkansas on a red-eye flight that night in order to get there in time for the wedding of someone in our family that's also part of the Patriot Academy family. So he's family because he's the brother of my daughter-in-law that married my oldest son, but he also runs our entire shipping department at Patriot Academy. So everyone that's watching this tonight, if you've ever ordered anything from Patriot Academy, your life has been blessed by the incredible efficiency and wonderful job that Jonah Murphy does running our shipping department. But he's getting married this week, so congrats to Jonah. Excited for him and just the whole Patriot Academy family. We're going to have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 weddings in the Patriot Academy family in just the next couple of months. 2 of those are my kids, so I got 2 kids getting married in the next few months. So it's an exciting time. All right, let's get to the good, the bad, and the ugly for the Tavern this week. Lots of good to talk about, but yes, some real ugly I got to share with you tonight as well. Some bad and some ugly. Some of it outside of our control and things that are happening, but some of it's right there in our backyard with what's happening at Patriot Academy with Constitution City. So I'll update you on that tonight. Well, let me start with some of the national stuff. President Trump and the Congress working to continuing to clean up Washington, D.C. Again, if you're a longtime Patriot Academy supporter and student, you've been through our Constitution classes. You know that I started talking about this 15 years ago in our very first Constitution Alive course. The fact that Washington, D.C. is absolutely under the jurisdiction of Congress. The Constitution gives that power specifically in Article 1, Section 8. The very place that we spend most of our time studying the Constitution, there's specifically a clause that gives the Congress the power to govern Washington, D.C. Just for anybody that's new that doesn't know this, Washington, D.C. was never intended to be a state, and it should not ever become a state. Now, if there's a constitutional amendment to make it a state and I lose that fight, then so be it. But my preference would be, and the founders' preference would be, that Washington, D.C. is a special place for the seat of the federal government, and you don't want that conflict of the seat of federal government being within any one state. That state would then get, maybe certain favors, or that state would try to, somehow have an advantage over the federal government that other states would not have. So we never want that to be the case. And so we have Washington, D.C. carved out of Maryland and Virginia both. And it should continue to be a special place that is not a state, but is specifically the federal city run by the Congress. Now, unfortunately, Congress has handed over that power to a local government multiple times throughout our history. It's not the first time that that's happened. One of those times that we've talked about a little bit here in the Tavern is it has become one of the big conspiracy theories out there, the 1871 Incorporation Act. It does not make the United States of America a corporation. There are a lot of mini corporations in the agencies, like the Federal Department of Federal Depository Insurance Corporation. I don't know if I'm saying it right. My brain's not working too well. But you got a lot of those types of corporations that are subsidiary entities that are essentially agencies for the federal government. That's not what the 1871 Incorporation Act was either. It was actually about incorporating D.C., just like we're incorporating Constitution City, just like your city where you live at some point was incorporated, or it may not be incorporated. We've got a fairly good-sized town right next to the Patriot Academy campus called Comfort, Texas. That's actually our address right now, even though we're closer to Fredericksburg, Texas. There's a town just south of us called Comfort, Texas, that's not even incorporated. It's a pretty decent sized town, but it's not incorporated. And the people there don't want to incorporate it. Totally understand that. They don't want another layer of government that they've got to deal with. So not every city or town or township or whatever is incorporated, but typically they are. And that's what happened to Washington, D.C. in 1871. It became Washington, D.C. With a local kind of an incorporated city, if you will, that had local city government so that Congress wouldn't have to micromanage, wanted to give local people there the chance to govern themselves, self-government. Unfortunately, though, Washington, D.C. has gotten out of control. The last time that there was really legislation in Congress, not to manage this, but to sort of set up how it was going to work, is the Home Rule Act that was in I just looked at it a week or two ago. Now I'm forgetting what year, 72, 73, somewhere around there. And it basically set up how Washington, D.C. would govern itself and how Congress would still have, it very clearly says Congress and the Constitution, or the Constitution still allows for Congress to have the final say, but Congress was basically not taking a total hands-off approach, but pretty close. Well, clearly that has been an abject failure. I mean, anyone that has been to D.C. in the last 20 years, you know how bad it is. It is a cesspool. I don't even like, going out. Even within the Capitol grounds, you have to watch your six constantly. And of course, the gun laws there have been terrible. I mean, even with the Bruin case that, makes it where you're supposed to be a shall issue, not only state, but also DC. It's so hard to be able to carry there. And so President Trump actually said this the other day too. I'll digress for a second. I think it was Friday or maybe Thursday. He made the comments that you should be able to carry in Washington, D.C., that law-abiding citizens should be able to carry their firearm, and that constitutional carry or national reciprocity or one of these solutions for Washington, D.C. would be absolutely appropriate. He even gave the example of, if you're walking down the street and some guy is going to try to mug you or kidnap a girl or whatever, that the best way to be able to fight back is not with a knife or with your fist, but with a firearm, which obviously we at Patriot Academy believe that. We train thousands and thousands of people on how to do exactly that. But unfortunately, I get disarmed every time I go to Washington, D.C., because I don't have a license to carry in D.C., and there's no national reciprocity, and there's no reciprocity between D.C. and Texas. So my license that I have in Texas is not recognized in Washington, D.C. So I'm literally disarmed from defending myself or my family or innocent people that might happen to be in the restaurant where I am, or church, or wherever it might be. So I am fully supportive of what President Trump said the other day about being able to carry in Washington, D.C. And that would be true even if they cleaned it up and it had way less crime than what it has had in the past. So that's another, put a pin in that. We might come back to that, but just keep that in the back of your mind that if the president has his way, and I think Congress would absolutely support this as the legislative entity over Washington, D.C., with the votes we have right now, we should be able to get this through. Even though it's only a 3-vote majority in the House, we should be able to get this through. And that is that you can carry in Washington, D.C. So back to the issue of who controls Washington, D.C. at the end of the day. Clearly, this mayor is a joke, absolute joke. She was horrible during COVID. She was horrible during the J6 trials. She was horrible during all of this stuff, continues to be horrible. And she's got to go. So I think you've got the entire council. I mean, the whole thing has allowed for crime to be rampant in Washington, D.C. So what President Trump is doing what the federal government should do, which clean up our national capital. The capital should be a place when you go there, it should be pristine. It should be the most beautiful, cleanest, safest city in America. That is our national capital. It's where so many of our treasures are. It's where so many of our places of honor for the people that have made the nation great in the first place, or even if they didn't make the nation great, but they served in some big capacity. Like I would say FDR did not make the nation great. I think he took us down the road to socialism, but he was, a president for nearly 4 terms if he hadn't died in office, and had a significant influence on America. So you've got the monument there to him, and MLK statue, and all of the Vietnam War Memorial and the Korean War Memorial, and all of these places where we as Americans go to honor people who served in the past in some capacity or another. And of course, the Capitol itself, man. I mean, I don't know. I've probably given 100 tours of the U.S. Capitol late at night, going into all those cool rooms and all the history that took place there. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's one of my favorite things to do, to give that tour, or at least it used to be. I have not for several years, I have not enjoyed going to DC at all because it is so crime ridden and because it is so uh, anti-constitutional in terms of political persecution of the opposition. So, in other words, I have known for the last 3 or 4 years that when I go to DC for a meeting or to give a tour or whatever it might be, that if I end up in a bad situation, if I end up getting jumped and I end up having to defend myself, and I don't have my firearm, but I have my taser or whatever it might be, or I have to actually get into a fight to defend myself or someone else, that I'm going to end up on the short end of the stick if that goes to court. If I end up having to, not just fight someone on the street to defend if they're trying to harm my wife or my kids or someone else, if that ends up becoming, an issue, I'm probably the one that's going to get prosecuted. I'm gonna end up being treated like Daniel Penny was treated on that subway, where he's defending innocent people, and yet now he's the bad guy that gets prosecuted. So I've known that for the last few years, that every blue city that I fly into to go do a speaking engagement, or let's say I go to Philadelphia to do one of my classes in Independence Hall, like I used to love doing. If I go there or DC or whatever it is, I've known for the last few years that if something happens, I'm going to be the one that gets prosecuted, and I'm going to get a raw deal, and I could very well end up in prison for the rest of my life or for years, and there won't be a whole lot that we can do about it because of the jurisdiction of that area and because of how bad the politics are. So knowing that, I haven't wanted to go to those places. So I've done it. I've gone if the event was important enough or whatever it might be. But what President Trump is doing in DC is trying to turn that around. He's trying to clean up the city, and he's using the Constitution to do it. And I support him fully. I think the bringing in the troops, I think all the things that he's doing to clean up DC, I am 100% behind it. I know there's some people, even from our side. Now, obviously, the left is squealing like a stuck pig, and they're whining and crying, oh, it's tyranny. And like, where were you for the last 4 years? But for them, President Trump calling in the troops to clean up DC, which is actually constitutional, is something that they hate. And I understand for them, they see this as tyrannical because of how they see their perspective of how they see President Trump. But there's people on the Republican side that are against this and saying that that federal power should not be exerted in Washington D.C. They need to be constitutionally educated if they're saying that. They need to understand Article 1, Section 8, and the specific power that the federal government has to manage Washington D.C. I hope that the president continues to press the gas on this. I did not look. I haven't had a chance to look today, but I think it was Saturday. As of Saturday, there hadn't been a homicide in Washington, D.C. Now, I'd be shocked if we went another 48 hours without one. But if we did, that's a pretty darn good record for 10, 12, 13 days since President Trump has done this offensive in D.C. to clean it up. I mean, that just shows you right there that the police in Washington, D.C. were being held back from doing their job and keeping the peace. There's a reason that normally the police union is Democrat. There's a reason that the police union president has come out, or police association president has come out in favor of what President Trump is doing, and he made it clear we haven't been allowed to do our job, and we're shorthanded. We're like 1,000 officers less than what we need to do our job. So anyway, enough about that one. I just want to say it's absolutely constitutional. 100% support the president. It's frankly one of those things we've asked to be done for 15 years, as I said, since the beginning of my Constitution class. And I hope it is not just a police action or a law enforcement action to clean up Washington, D.C. It's got to become more than that. It's got to become a complete political resetting of the table. Congress needs to go back to what the Constitution says. They need to take over D.C., and there needs to be a committee in Congress like there used to be that essentially governs and manages Washington, D.C. Now, one quick side note, I might have mentioned this on Flashpoint. I don't think I've mentioned it in the Tavern, but there is talk, frankly, led by maybe the second or third most constitutional guy in all of Congress, U.S. Senator Mike Lee, and he's actually saying, what needs to happen is a furtherance of what happened, I think 100 years ago was the last time this happened, where some of the land of Washington, D.C. is given back to the states, but the federal capital center stays a special place. In other words, whenever the Constitution carved out Washington, D.C., Back then, of course, that was barren land. There was nothing there. What Mike Lee is saying is that I think it was 100 years ago, it may have been less than that, but there was some moment whenever I believe it was Virginia was given back some of the land that had been ceded to create Washington D.C., and so that became part of part of a state and no longer governed by the Congress. And he's saying do more of that and shrink the physical area that is Washington, D.C., and is the special constitutional place that is the seat of federal government, and give the rest of that over to Maryland and Virginia, and let it be governed by them. I could support that. I mean, it's definitely Democrat populated area anyway. So if it goes to Maryland, it's not going to really change anything politically. It probably will continue to be governed as poorly as it is being governed right now. So that should be thought through. The part that would go to Virginia would be, a Democrat part of Virginia. It would actually probably make it harder for Republicans and for that Virginia to be cleaned up, because Virginia's on the bubble like a lot of these states that I've been going to. And even though Youngkin won and there's been some good turns in Virginia, it would not help if you gave that area back to Virginia in terms of Democrat numbers. It would increase Democrat numbers in Virginia. So anyway, all that to say, whatever they decide to do is up to them. Self-governing for that area for sure. But it is up to us whether or not Washington, D.C. itself becomes governed by Congress. So anyway, we'll see where all that goes. The other item that continues to be debated and continues to be questions about the constitutionality of it is, of course, the redistricting, the reapportionment questions, all of that. Texas has now passed this new redistricting bill that will, in fact, I just interviewed Phil King. It'll be on tomorrow, so make sure you listen to Wall Builders Radio tomorrow for a full half hour with Phil King, essentially debriefing the bill that just went through the Texas House and Senate. It has now passed both the House and Senate. The governor's supposed to sign it. He may have already signed it today. I haven't been on the news today, but he's definitely going to sign it by tomorrow. And that, according to Phil, who is a great friend of mine, we came into the House together 27 years ago, and he's in the Senate now. But according to Phil, who has dealt with redistricting multiple times over the last couple of decades, Phil says that he says this is not guaranteed to give Republicans 5 more seats. A lot is going to depend on the candidates and the incumbency and all those things. That will influence it greatly. But it could produce 5 more Republican seats from Texas. Now, that definitely will help in the midterms next year. And then, of course, California is trying to zero that out by giving 5 more Democrat seats in California. California is probably the only one of the Democrat states that could possibly squeeze out more Democrats out of their gerrymandering. I don't think they're going to be able to do that in these other blue states. In fact, some of those blue states have literally squeezed out the gerrymandering to the point that there are no Republicans at all represented in their congressional delegation, or they've packed all the Republicans into 1 or 2 seats, and they're just not going to be able to squeeze out any more Democrats. But there's a ton of Republican states that absolutely could go to the mat on redistricting and squeeze out more Republicans in those states. I mean, you could end up with 15 or 20 more Republicans if you do this in multiple. I mean, Arkansas, Tennessee. I mean, a bunch of these states that have not really done gerrymandering, which is constitutional, by the way. So let's be clear. It's got a very negative term. It is political. There's no doubt about it. But it is up to the legislature to draw those lines, how they want to draw those lines. And Democrats have done this to the nth degree for decades and decades and decades. Republicans have done it to some extent. Even in Texas, did it to some extent 10 years ago and 20 years ago, but not to this level. This is a new level. And it's just part of the process. I mean, you've got to decide how those lines are going to be drawn, and whoever controls the legislature gets to decide how they're going to be drawn. And it does go back, that word gerrymandering does go back to the founding of the country. So we've been gerrymandering since there's been districts. So it's actually named after Elbert Jerry. He's one of the guys that I tell stories about all the time. He was a signer of the Declaration, went on to be vice president. I think he died while he was vice president. I forgot to check on that the other day, but that's something in the back of my mind says that's when he died. But while he was governor of Massachusetts, before he was vice president, he oversaw the redrawing of the maps there, and one of the districts looked like a salamander. So it became nicknamed gerrymandering because Governor Jerry allowed for that map to look, as awkward as it was. So anyway, is what it is. But just know Texas is done with their process. Phil was telling me, and you'll hear this in the interview tomorrow, he doesn't know if there's time. It's a tough process to get it all the way through and to get these legislators to say, I'm going to do it, and push it through, and have a governor that's willing to push it through. It's difficult, and we're getting down to the wire. I think they could. I think if the political will is there, it can be done, just like it was done in Texas. And as I have said, listen, as a serious critic of Greg Abbott during COVID for being a tyrant, I said, if he gets school choice done and he helps to close the border and he does some of these things, I will forgive all and support him in the next gubernatorial race. And it looks like he is going to run for governor again. And he got school choice done. And the fact that he managed to get to force the Democrats back into Texas, the ones that ran away and hid and did their typical, bratty kid move of running off, taking your ball and going home. The fact that he managed to force this thing through and get them back, kudos. And let me just give a toast in the tavern right here to Greg Abbott for pulling all these things off. He said, come and take it, and followed it through. So kudos to him. There was one other thing. Let's see, what was the other headline I wanted to hit, and then we'll go to your questions. Oh, actually, I got to update you on Constitution City too, but there was one other headline. What was it? I forget what it was. Oh, well. Actually, wait, I know where I wrote that down. No, actually, I covered all of them. Okay, so Constitution City, update on Constitution City. For those of you that do not know, we are attempting to self-govern and actually do this the American way, self-governance. And we founded Constitution City on July 4th. We had our Declaration of Independence, and we met all the legal requirements to become a city. We petitioned for the county judge to sign the order for the election. That's how it works in Texas. The county judge, it's a ministerial act. Once you show that you got the number of inhabitants and the square mileage and all that kind of stuff, the county judge is just supposed to sign the order, and then you have an election. And it's up to you. It's still up to you in your area, the people of that geographic area that you've mapped out for the new city. They have to vote yes. And so every registered voter there gets to vote and decide. Again, self-governance. You decide what your future is going to be. You decide your fate. And the county judge said he supported us on this, said he was going to sign the order, and then decided to bring it before the commissioner's court and give people a chance to speak out for or against it at the commissioner's court. No reason to do that. It's not necessary at all. The other commissioners have no say in it. It's supposed to be just the county judge signing it. But when he said he wanted to do that, I was like, okay, fine, let's do that. I'm all for public hearings, even though I got a little nervous because, there's always people against us. We've got leftists in Kendall County. It's an 80% Republican county, but there's leftists there, believe me. And then there's the moderate, rhino GOP people that you're always going to have Republicans that are not true constitutional conservatives and certainly not biblical citizens. And they're always going to be against us because we lead with the gospel, right? We don't shy away from that at all. We say we're biblical citizens, which means we're going to live out our citizenship based on what the Bible says we should do to treat our neighbors the right way, treat our neighbors the way we want to be treated, and we're going to do it constitutionally. So when you wave that flag, folks, you've got people that are going to be against you. You're literally, you're putting the red flag out there for the bull. I mean, you're saying come and take it. And so we're always going to be like that. We're going to be unashamed. We're always going to be like that. So the downside to that is that when you have a public hearing, it opens the door for those people to come out of the woodwork. Well, the crazy thing is we had the hearing a week ago. I guess now it's been 2 weeks. We had the hearing 2 weeks ago, and all of the testimony was positive. I mean, it was the sheriff himself got up and sang our praises, man. It was some of the best things said about Patriot Academy on the public record that I've ever heard. So thank you, Sheriff Al, for that. I really appreciate it. And then the only other guy that got up in the meeting there where we were and testified had just met us or just heard about us a few days before, researched us online, looked at what we were doing, and said, man, we need more of this. These people are exactly what the country needs. And so the testimony was fantastic. And then the commissioners voted 5-0. Yes. They were like, yes, you get to have your election. Go have your election. You determine this now. Self-governance. And it was great, including the county judge. And then just a few days later, he started getting cold feet. And for whatever reason, whoever was whispering in his ear and whatever, people against teaching kids the Constitution for whatever reason started making him question our definition of inhabitants and question, which is not clearly defined in the law, by the way. And we said that going in. We made that very clear. This is not defined well in the law, and it could mean people that are there just for a few weeks, which is what some of the case law said. It could mean people that are there for the rest of their life. It absolutely should include students that are attending classes at Patriot Academy, just like every college in the country counts the students that are there as inhabitants, even though they're not going to be there forever. They might be there for one semester, taking one class. But they're counted as inhabitants whenever that city gets to determine its ETJ and all the other things that are determined by this definition of inhabitants. And so we met all that, and yet this county judge stabbed us in the back, completely stabbed us in the back. And in the final hour of the final day to order the election, decided not to do it, and sends me this letter, questioning our definition of inhabitants, and even questioning whether or not we're a community, which really bothered me, because I had just received a text that day from a wonderful young lady that we rescued out of an abusive situation, and she's been with us since February, and her whole life has been turned around, and she's just a wonderful gal, and become a part of our family and the community there, and a blessing to everybody in our community. And yes, it is a community. And I remember her text to me that day was about how thankful she was to be a part of this. And anyway, to even question whether or not we were a community is just an insult. So that's where we are. And unfortunately, the elites, and you might have seen my video on social media today where I quoted from Ronald Reagan's first inaugural address, because he talks about the fact that there are people who actually think that we're not capable of self-governing. And he said, but if that's true, then who among us is capable of governing others? If we're not capable of governing ourselves, then who among us is capable of governing everybody else? And he literally used the language that there are people from time to time, we think that there are elites that should govern us instead of us governing ourselves. And I just got to tell you, man, the elites, they won this round, but they will not win this war. I can promise you that. They've delayed us for a year. That's what this does. By stabbing us in the back and doing this, it's delayed Constitution City for a full year, which means it's going to delay Independence Hall. It's going to delay a lot of our construction and our plans, because now we have to follow all of these micromanaging, land management, crazy, non-scientific guesstimation rules, where they make you do everything that, because what they do is they're myopic. They don't. Bureaucrats and elites do not understand individuality of the individual or the community or the land. They try to treat everything the same. And so because of that, it'll probably cost about $1 million in terms of our regulatory compliance that we're going to have to do over the next year. So that's unfortunate for sure, because that's another $1 million I got to go, raise, and the people that are watching this, that you've got to donate to go towards that in order to get Independence Hall. Independence Hall is a $12 million build for us. Okay. So what they just did was add $1 million to that. And it's just shameful. It's just wrong. And unfortunately it is what it is. And so we're gonna regroup, reload, and we'll be back. And what it's going to do is it's going to cause us to be more committed to making the changes locally that are necessary to restore property rights. Like we're going to do that within Constitution City, and then make it a city on a hill that people could see this is the proper balance between landowners and local government. Now we're going to have to do that for the whole county, which is going to end up being a blessing to everybody that lives in the county. But we're going to have to fight to restore property rights for the entire county. And then hopefully you'll see us doing that, and you'll do that in your county and with your local city government. So you might remember me talking about this with Rebuilding Liberty, our 12-step recovery program for the country. And one of those steps is restoring property rights, restoring this balance. It just means we're going to have to dive into that more ourselves at the local level than we had originally planned to do, because we were kind of trying to teach everybody in the whole country to do it. And our job is to educate. But now we're just going to have to do a lot more of that heavy lifting at the local level. So, that's what happens. That's okay. We are undeterred for sure. We're delayed, but we are undeterred. So just know that we're going to need even more of your help to be able to get this done. And the programs are continuing to grow, and we'll continue to get things done. But unfortunately, they're going to be able to slow us down a little bit and obviously cost us a lot more money. So that's the update on Constitution City. It's still going to happen. It's just getting delayed. All right, let's go to your questions. I know that we've had quite a few of you comment, and so let me get the chat open here where I can see what your questions are. All right. Look at that. All the way from Maryland. Thanks for being on with us. Yes, thank you, Colleen. Great point. Our next coach conference or Constitution conference is in Colorado in just a few weeks. Another state like these places that I've been going that is on the bubble. It's being ruled by elite leftists right now, but the population is on the bubble, and we can turn that state. There's no doubt in my mind that we can, and so we're investing time and energy there as well. Looking forward to that. That one's September 6th, so look forward to having any of you in the area join us for that one. Question about voice voting, and I don't see a name. The person saying times they are changing. That's a good, that's a good name for you to for your social media there. Apparently there was a voice vote. I don't know where you're talking about. If you're talking about in Congress or in a particular state legislature, but the question is the voice vote was very obviously it was on an amendment and on a huge bill, and the nays were definitely louder and should have won, but the speaker gave it to the yays. Here's the thing. It's different depending on the legislative body. I can tell you we actually experience this in the simulation for Leadership Congress at Patriot Academy all the time. It is up to the chair to make that ruling based on what they hear. But the way we do it in Texas and the way that we do it at Patriot Academy is anybody at that point can holler out for a division, and then you have to actually do a real vote, not just a voice vote. Whatever this body was that you were watching, maybe they don't have that rule or allow for that, or no one did it, and everybody just gave in. But your question about whether or not it can be redone at this point, obviously too late. But at that moment, yes, I don't even know of a legislative body where they don't allow you to question the speaker's ruling on a voice vote. You should be able to do that. I'd be curious where that is. So if you can add that to the notes here, that'd be great. Let's see. Massachusetts, would I go to the state capital there and speak at the Capitol if he could get us a room? Sure. I'd be glad to. Even though Massachusetts is totally ruled by left wingers at this point, there's so much history there. I love going to Lexington. I love going to Boston even and going to the Freedom Trail and Old South Meeting House and all of that cool stuff. So I still love going there. And yes, it is a gorgeous capital. And so 100%, I would consider going there if we can get a big enough group together and it works with the calendar. Let me know. Well, Scarlett, thank you. We did have a great conference, and you did a great job. Y'all should, if you haven't had Scarlett lead one of the coach panels in your area, it will absolutely convince you that you are capable of being a coach and doing classes, no matter what your background or anything. It is so encouraging. I appreciated that panel for sure. Great opportunity. Okay. So it is Pennsylvania, and your rep changed their vote after the fact. Is this allowed? Again, I don't know the specific rules in Pennsylvania. Usually, yes, in a legislative body, if they cast a vote, if they let's say you have your vote, and your vote is registered one way, you can go up there. If you do it immediately, you can go up to the journal, up to the clerk, and say, "I was registered voting yes. I wanted to be no. Please change my vote in the journal." And so, even though the overall vote tally at that time, you may not be able to affect it or change it, or may have gone that against what you want. You want to make sure your vote is registered correctly, so that when you go back home and have to defend your vote in with your constituents, you can show that. Let's see. I don't know. Elizabeth says they should have gotten 7 to 10 seats. 5 is nothing. I don't know, Elizabeth. I don't know how you've got. Don't forget, in Texas, we got Dallas, we got Houston, with San Antonio, Austin. These places are liberal. I'm telling you, there's a lot of Democrats in Texas. So folks that think we can end up with, what do we got, 38 congressional seats, that we could do, 37 could be Republican. I don't think so. We're not, Texas is not an 80-20 Republican state. We are a 55-45 Republican state, maybe 60-40 Actually, I don't know that I've seen. I have seen some statewide races go 60-40, but it's rare, and that's if there's really almost like no opponent on the other side. So I don't know that 7 to 10 would have been. I don't think so. I think 5 is probably the most. And believe me, Phil King was the one running the redistricting process on the Senate side, and I trust that guy in the room. Okay, I trust that he got the most that he could possibly get. That's right. And then you also have to balance. Alex is right. You got to balance the Voting Rights Act, and all that stuff. Now, here's my hope: is that this helps us move towards a non-racist system. We have a very racist system right now. The Voting Rights Act has been twisted in a pretzel to where, and unfortunately, this Supreme Court has ruled twice in the last 3 years in favor of being racist in the drawing of congressional lines, actually drawing the lines to guarantee that you have a white person or a black person or a brown person or whatever elected. That's just racist, man. That should not be considered at all. Now, Phil told me in the interview that you'll hear tomorrow that as the person that was doing this, he did not look at any race at all. They were totally non-racist in the way they drew the lines. And he said on the Senate floor, man, oh, you can imagine, he got called every name in the book by the Democrats who wanted to be racist. They wanted to draw lines based on race. They wanted to guarantee that a certain color of skin would be elected. Now, if that's not racist, I don't know what it is. But thankfully, the votes that passed the map were not racist, and so they chose not to be racist. I am hoping that this is a move in the right direction. We'll see what the Supreme Court does when this ultimately gets to them. Let's hope that for the first time on a ruling like this, they are not racist, and that it's based on just the number of people, regardless of race. Oh, it was the House Appropriations Committee. Wow, that's interesting. I don't know the rules there. I just had to tell you, I'm sorry. I got to plead ignorance on how you would appeal the ruling of the chair of the committee in a situation like that. Okay, I think that's. Let me make sure I didn't miss anybody's question here. Is there a wall builders type of a group that covers other parts of U.S. history? We have wall builders for our founding fathers, founding documents. Amy, if you're listening still or watching, if you can put something in the chat that's more specific, what part of U.S. history is it that you're wanting to be covered? And I'll let you know if I know of anybody that's doing that. Okay. Yeah, that's right, Colleen. The American Story series. I think they've got 2 done now. The third one is almost ready for publication. They are very good on a broad part of American history that's going to be covered there. Alex, to get the John Birch Society to apologize for anything would require probably a new generation of John Birchers to take over. Honestly, unfortunately, it's mostly. It has become a very. They used to be defenders of the Constitution. Now they've become basically defenders of the status quo, which I don't think the status quo is working very well. I think we're post-constitutional right now. I think our system is broken, and that you have to fix the system. You have to actually reset the table and bring the Constitution back. You've got to revive the Constitution. You basically got to do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and restore the constitutional balance of powers and limited government and all those things. And the John Birchers are just against that. They are against anything that will help to restore constitutional governance in America because they're against any amending of the Constitution. It's weird, man. It's like they've gotten in this mindset, and most of the ones I've met are not even some of them that I've met are nice and are willing to discuss and debate. But most of the ones that I've met in the last couple of years, man, they are old curmudgeon. Like they won't debate. They just yell. They accuse you of all kinds of stuff. It's weird, man. It's weird. It's unfortunate, but they've become like the leftist on the right, where the left loves to shout down the opposition and prevent you from being able to debate, and they call you all kinds of names and they lie about what you're actually trying to do. And unfortunately, that's where the John Birchers have gone. And I hope that changes because there are a lot of people that have joined that are well-meaning that want to save the country and they're patriotic and all that. But it's just one of those things, man. I wish I could explain it. It's very unfortunate. And unfortunately, they've got a large following and constituency in some of these states that need to get on board with amending the Constitution to restore the Constitution. And these John Birchers are preventing it from happening. So we'll see. We'll continue to do the Lord's work and fight those battles. Okay, I think I got oh, no, there's Amy's response on the Civil War. Yeah, there's definitely more in An American Story, or The American Story, that's coming on that. I think the first one stops before the Civil War. I can't remember if the second one covers it or not. Somebody else out there might remember. I should know that. I know, but I can't remember off the top of my head. And I'm trying to think who would be some of the best resources on that. I'd have to think on that, Amy. I don't off the top of my head. I mean, I know there are sources out there. I don't like to recommend it unless I have read it recently and have verified that it's a good source. Okay, I think that's it. All right, folks. 15 minutes from now, we will be live on Flashpoint. So if you haven't been watching Flashpoint, you need to be watching Flashpoint. I think it's the best news program out there. Does the best job of bringing the historical, the spiritual, the current events, lots of great guests coming on as interviews, and then really good commentary from guys like me, but also folks like Mark Meckler and Lance Wallnow and Hank Kuhneman and Dutch Sheets and all these folks. And of course, Gene always does a great job herding the cats and keeping us on target with whatever the topic is for that night. So if you haven't watched Flashpoint, check out fbarmy.com, and we will soon have Flashpoint on Patriot U. So you have one place you can go to watch the Tavern, to watch Flashpoint, to do all of your Constitution classes, all of those things. Patriot U is going to be growing and be an even better resource for you. Okay, I think that is it. God bless y'all. Thanks for joining me in the Tavern. I don't have my Tavern mug, but got my borrowed Come and Take It mug. So we did bring a little Texas with us to California. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you next week. And next week, I'll actually be in the Tavern, I believe.